I didn't need to check the mirrors twice. I knew the curve of the driveway like the lines of Daniel's face. Every crack in the concrete, every overgrown weed in the seams. The car slid forward with a hum, that deep engine purr he loved so much. The house came into view, already glowing with warm light and muffled voices from inside. I parked right at the edge, just like he used to, nose forward, wheels turned slightly toward the street. For a second, I sat still with both hands on the wheel, listening to the engine settle. Inside, I knew they were laughing, drinking wine, rehearsing concern in case I cried, hoping I wouldn't. I stepped out and smoothed the front of my coat, letting my fingers drift across the hood. Still flawless, still ours. The door opened before I knocked. Nathan. He blinked when he saw me. His eyes dropped instantly to the car, then back to me. "Mom," he said, too measured, like he was trying not to sound accusatory. "You shouldn't be driving that car." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Why not?" He hesitated, caught. "I just mean, it's powerful, and it's slippery this time of year." Behind him, Lauren appeared with a half-full glass of red. She glanced past me, squinting toward the driveway. "No way," she laughed. "Did you actually drive that here?" I moved past them both without answering. The warmth of the house hit me like a wall. Roasting vegetables, perfume, someone's cologne. Voices rose and dipped from the living room. "Mom brought Daniel's car," Lauren called out to the group, loud enough for all the guests to hear. "Guess she's decided to become a race car driver now." Polite chuckles, a few eyebrows raised. Someone clapped, not quite sure what they were applauding. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, their eyes trailing behind me. I could feel the moment shift. Their reactions weren't cruel. They were worse than that. They were kind, patronizing. That soft, overly careful tone people use when they think you're broken and too fragile to know it. "Just glad you made it," said a woman near the counter. Mira, maybe. "We were worried it'd be too much." "Too much what?" I asked, pouring myself water instead of wine. Nathan hovered nearby, watching me like I might suddenly collapse. "We were going to offer to drive you, Mom. You didn't need to prove anything." There it was again. That word. Prove. They all thought I was making a statement. That by driving the car, I was trying to cling to Daniel's shadow or scream into the silence he left behind. None of them considered the truth. That maybe I just liked driving it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I stepped away to check it. Patricia. Time to show them the truth. I smiled, small and private. Patricia had always seen more than the rest of them. She knew what today was. Not just a family dinner. Not just a quiet gathering. It was the anniversary of the day Daniel signed the papers. That car wasn't just a relic of him. It was mine. I cleared my throat and turned back toward the group, who were now pretending not to watch me. "I know some of you think it's strange that I drove Daniel's car today," I said, my voice calm, even. "Mom." Nathan stepped forward, instantly on edge. I held up a hand. "Let me finish." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Here we go. I'm not driving it out of grief, or desperation, or to make some kind of dramatic statement," I said. "Daniel gave me that car, legally, as a gift. The title is in my name. Has been for over a year." Silence. Nathan blinked. "Wait. He what? He didn't tell you?" I asked. "He wanted me to have something that was mine, not just what was left over when he was gone. He made sure of it." Lauren shifted uncomfortably, her expression suddenly less smug. "He said I'd never drive it," I continued, softer now. I told him not to bet against me. Nobody laughed this time. Behind me, the house suddenly felt a little too small, a little too quiet. I drained the last of my water and set the glass down. And for the record, I didn't stall once. I turned back toward the hallway, ignoring their stunned silence. But before I reached the stairs, Nathan's voice followed. Wait. Mom, where exactly are you going? I stopped, just long enough to let the pause stretch thin. Then I looked over my shoulder. Out. And I meant it. I left the house without another word, back through the front door, letting it close behind me with a soft but deliberate click. The air outside felt cooler than before. Still. Sharp. Like the quiet right before a storm. I stood next to the car for a moment, letting my hand rest on the driver's side mirror, not because I needed to catch my breath, but because I needed the silence to remind me who I was before everyone inside tried to rewrite it. They didn't know the half of it, and they were about to find out. I drove slowly this time, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to remember. Every corner of the road, every turn he used to take too fast, every stretch of it that once held us together. When I pulled into the garage, I didn't even turn off the engine right away. I just sat there, headlights washing the far wall, the soft hum filling the space like a voice I'd forgotten I missed. Then I opened the glove compartment. The envelope was still there. Cream-colored. Thick. Daniel's handwriting still bold across the front. For Eleanor. Don't open unless you're ready. I smiled at that. He'd written it like he was giving me a puzzle, not a legal document. I'd opened it 2 days after the funeral. Quietly. Alone. While Lauren was still fielding sympathy texts, and Nathan was making spreadsheets for my finances without asking. Inside were 2 things. The original gift certificate Daniel had drawn up. 1 part joke, 1 part love letter, and a signed registration, already in my name. He had filed the paperwork without telling me, dated, notarized, all official. It wasn't a last-minute gesture. He had planned it, chosen it, and not for them, for me. Upstairs, I pulled the documents from the file drawer in my desk and laid them out on the kitchen table, one by one. The certificate, the registration, the insurance transfer, all complete. I took a picture of each. Then I opened a new folder on my computer and labeled it simply, Proof. The doorbell rang before I could sit down. I didn't have to guess. Nathan. I didn't rush. I let him knock twice more before opening the door. He stood there, hands in his coat pockets, that same tense line between his brows. You can't just leave like that, he said. I didn't realize I needed your permission, I replied. He looked past me, into the house. Can we talk inside? I stepped back. Fine, but briefly. He came in, but not all the way, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome, or if he even wanted to be. I'm not trying to control anything, he said. I just think some decisions need oversight. I laughed, short and dry. Oversight? I'm your mother, not your tenant. He didn't like that. I saw it in the way he clenched his jaw. You're still grieving, Mom. You're not thinking clearly. No, Nathan, I said, walking to the table and picking up the registration. This is me thinking clearly. This is what your father wanted. I handed it to him. He read it twice before handing it back. That doesn't mean... Doesn't mean what? I interrupted. That I get to make my own choices? That I'm allowed to hold on to something he gave me before he was gone? He looked cornered. And nothing makes Nathan more dangerous than not being in control. You're not being rational, he said. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Patricia. Record everything, especially if he starts overstepping. You might need it later. I turned my phone face down on the table. Victor called about 20 minutes later. Daniel's old friend. A lawyer, but the kind with warmth in his voice. I heard there were questions, he said gently. Do you want me to stop by? Walk through the documents together? Not yet, I said, but soon. You let me know, he replied. And Eleanor, your husband was very clear about his wishes. I know. When we hung up, I stared at the folder again, then reached for a notepad. I started writing. Not notes exactly, more like a timeline. Who said what? When? What I had on paper. What I could request if I needed to. Every time Nathan tried to assert authority he didn't have. Not because I was planning a war, but because I'd finally accepted I might have to win one. The knock at the door came again. I expected Nathan, but this time, it was Lauren. She didn't wait for an invitation, just stepped in with her coat still on and cheeks flushed from the cold. I didn't come to argue, she said quickly. I came to warn you. That stopped me. Warn me about what? She hesitated, then finally quietly. Nathan's talking to a financial advisor behind your back. He wants to challenge the will. My stomach dropped, but I didn't show it. Instead, I nodded once and turned to the folder again. Let him try. I waited until morning. Not out of hesitation, but strategy. People listen differently in daylight. They hear less drama, more logic. Or at least, they pretend to. The house was quiet when I came down the stairs, a stillness that felt earned. Lauren had stayed the night, curled up in the guest room like she was 13 again and afraid of a thunderstorm. Nathan hadn't called. That was his way. Retreat, regroup, return with a plan. I already had mine. I laid out the documents again, this time in the sunlit dining room. Title, registration, insurance. Even the last maintenance receipt fresh and clean. Victor arrived just after 9, exactly when he said he would. Same old coat, same gentle nod when he stepped inside. He scanned the papers without saying much, his fingers sliding across signatures like he was tracing intent. It's airtight, he said finally. Daniel made sure of it. I nodded. That's what I thought. You're sure you want to do this now? Yes. His brow lifted slightly. Then I'll be here, quietly. It wasn't long before the door opened again. Lauren, hair pulled back, eyes cautious. She paused when she saw Victor, then glanced at the documents on the table. What's going on? She asked, voice low. Nothing hostile, I replied, sliding the registration into a leather folder. Just a little drive. Now? She blinked. You're taking the car now? I'm taking my car now, I said. For a spin around the block? She hesitated. Mom, with everything going on. Exactly, I said, walking past her toward the door. Time to remind everyone where the line is. Nathan pulled into the driveway just as I opened the garage. Of course he did. He stepped out of the car fast, jacket half buttoned, voice already tight. You're not serious. I didn't stop walking. Perfect timing. I was just about to go. He looked past me toward Victor. You signed off on this? I confirmed the paperwork, Victor said calmly. Nathan's tone sharpened. She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. This is reckless. I met his eyes. I'm not proving anything, Nathan. I'm simply living. Lauren followed us outside, arms crossed, trying to play mediator. Can't we just talk this through before... No, I said, gently but firmly. We've talked enough. Now I'm driving. She stepped forward. Mom, I just think maybe. I held up a hand. Lauren, I love you, but move. She stopped. That surprised even her. Victor opened the passenger door for me. Want company? I shook my head. Not this time. I slid into the seat like I'd done it every day for years. The leather still smelled faintly like him, like aftershave and old cologne and something warm I could never quite name. I closed the door with purpose. Click the belt. Hands on the wheel. Outside, I could see them watching. Nathan with arms folded, jaw clenched. Lauren with her weight shifted to one hip, worry plain in her eyes. Patricia had stepped out onto the porch now too, phone in hand. Not filming, but close. Observing everything. Storing it like evidence. I started the engine. It roared to life, steady and smooth. I didn't even glance in the rearview mirror as I backed out. I just caught Nathan's stunned expression in the corner of my eye, and Lauren's visible exhale as I shifted into drive. The tires gripped the pavement without complaint. The car moved like it remembered me, like it knew exactly who it belonged to. Block after block, I let it breathe. Not fast, not showy, just capable, confident. Like Daniel had driven it himself and handed it off without skipping a beat. When I circled back 20 minutes later, the house came into view slowly, like I was approaching a stage I hadn't meant to walk onto. But I didn't flinch. I parked clean, reversed with precision, and let the engine idle for a full 5 seconds before I shut it off. I stepped out. Silence. Nathan was the first to speak. You proved your point. That wasn't the point, I said. He frowned. Then what was it? But before I could answer, Patricia lowered her phone and said, You might want to come inside. Nathan turned. Why? She handed him her phone. Because your name just got mentioned on a legal podcast. Something about premature will disputes. I blinked. What? She looked at me, eyes sharp. Someone's talking, and they're not on your side. The house felt different when I stepped back inside. Not quieter, just heavier. As if my absence, however brief, had rearranged the air. Nathan followed a few steps behind, his silence brittle. Lauren hovered near the front windows, arms folded, eyes darting between her brother and me like she was waiting for one of us to ignite. Patricia stood near the sideboard, phone still in hand. Victor had taken a seat at the end of the dining table, thumbing slowly through the folder I'd left open. No one said a word as I hung up my coat and made my way to the table. I didn't rush. I poured myself tea instead. Earl Grey. Strong. Unapologetic. The mug felt warm in my hands. Solid. Victor glanced up and gave me the smallest of nods. Everything's here. Nathan, pacing now, finally broke. I don't understand how this wasn't mentioned. When we did the estate inventory, that's because it wasn't part of the estate, Victor said gently. The car was transferred while Daniel was still alive. Clean. No lien, no conditions. It was a gift. Properly filed. Eleanor's name is the only one on the title. Nathan stared at him. You're sure? Victor rotated the folder toward him and tapped the registration with one steady finger. Read. Lauren leaned over Nathan's shoulder, brow furrowed as she scanned the page. Her voice came out small. It's dated a year ago. I sipped my tea. Nathan bristled. This doesn't make sense. He would have told us. No, I said quietly. He wouldn't have. He knew exactly how this would play out. His face flushed. So you think he kept secrets from us? I think he protected me from exactly this moment. Across the room, one of the guests coughed softly. I'd forgotten they were still here. Half the dinner party now awkwardly staged in the hallway, pretending not to listen while clearly hearing every word. I think, I continued, he gave me something that was mine, without strings, without your approval, without the need for a debate after he died. Lauren's voice dropped. Why that car, though? You never even drove it until now. Because he wanted me to, I said. Eventually, he believed I would. Nathan sat down hard, rubbing his temples. And what now? You just keep it? Drive it around the neighborhood like it's no big deal? Victor spoke before I could. Legally, yes. She can do whatever she wants with it. Sell it. Garage it. Drive cross country. Your father made sure she didn't need anyone's consent. Nathan looked at Victor like he was trying to find a crack in the logic. There wasn't one. Patricia, leaning against the wall, crossed one ankle over the other and finally said, You know what I find interesting? Everyone turned. She held up her phone. The podcast mentioned Daniel's name in a listener question. Something about revocable gifts and heirs contesting them, and it just happens to surface today? What are the odds? Nathan frowned. You think I leaked something? I think someone did, she said flatly, and it sure as hell wasn't Eleanor. He stood, jaw tight. I've made one phone call. One, to ask general legal questions. I didn't say names. But someone did, I said, placing my mug gently on the table. And now the rest of our friends are standing in my hallway pretending they're not part of this mess. Lauren turned around, startled to see how many guests were still lingering. Mira, George, a few others, all frozen mid-conversation. I'll ask them to leave, she said quickly, moving toward the foyer. No need, I said, raising my voice just enough. This wasn't ever going to stay private anyway. That stopped her. Let them hear, I added. Let them see who I am now, and what I won't tolerate. Victor closed the folder slowly. Eleanor, if I may, just to be thorough, I'd recommend a quick notarized letter reaffirming your sole ownership. It's not necessary, but it may keep things cleaner if this continues. I nodded. Send me the template, I'll sign it this afternoon. Nathan looked like he wanted to say more, to fight. But he didn't. Not now. Not with Patricia watching. Not with strangers still standing on the fringe of our shame. I stood again, smoothing my sweater, steadying my breath. If you still don't believe it, I said, you're welcome to get a second opinion. Nathan didn't answer. Lauren whispered, You don't have to do this in front of everyone. I didn't want to, I said, picking up the folder and walking toward the stairs. But I wasn't the one who made it public. At the landing, I turned just slightly, enough to see Nathan still frozen by the table, Lauren watching me with worry she didn't know how to name, and Patricia quietly typing something into her phone. Then Victor said it, softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Daniel told me once, if anything ever went sideways, Eleanor would be the last one standing. And I still was. I didn't come back downstairs right away. I let them sit with it. Let the guests murmur their excuses and drift toward the door, coats rustling, heels clacking lightly on the hardwood. No one made eye contact. The silence of polite retreat. By the time I returned, the room had emptied, except for the core three. Lauren sat curled at the edge of the couch, arms tight across her stomach. Nathan stood at the fireplace, unmoving. Victor remained at the dining table, calmly packing up the documents. Patricia had taken my usual chair near the side window, legs crossed, as though watching a slow play she already knew the ending to. I walked in with nothing but a fresh mug of tea and the one sheet of paper none of them had seen yet. The original letter, Daniel's handwriting still alive on the page, slanted, steady, confident. Nathan, I said, stopping near the fireplace. There's something else you need to understand. He didn't turn. This wasn't just about a car, I continued. This was about trust, about agency. Still no reaction. So I read aloud. To whomever this concerns, including my children, this vehicle is being transferred to Eleanor as a gift, not in anticipation of death, but in full awareness of what she will need to face in my absence. She deserves something that is hers, untouched, uncontested, and unrestricted by anyone's assumptions about what she can or cannot do. I trust her judgment more than anyone else's. I looked up. Victor blinked slowly. Patricia smiled faintly. Lauren's mouth parted slightly, a word caught in her throat that never arrived. Nathan turned finally, the letter's words seeming to register like a bruise surfacing. "You're saying he anticipated this?" he said, voice low. I folded the page once gently and set it on the mantel beside him. "I'm saying," I replied, "he knew you." Lauren finally found her voice. "Mom." Her tone was softer now, less defensive. She looked down at her hands. "I just didn't think... You didn't think I could," I said. "It's all right. You weren't alone in that." From the hallway, Mira's voice floated faintly. "I think we left our scarf." "No, no," George murmured. "Let's just go." Their shadows passed behind the frosted window by the door. The weight of what they'd witnessed would hang over this neighborhood for weeks. I didn't mind. It had been hanging over me for years. Victor closed the folder and pushed his chair back. "I'll courier that letter to be notarized," he said. "Once it's official, there'll be no angle left." "Good," I said. Nathan crossed to the table and looked down at the paperwork again, as if seeing it for the first time. "He never talked to me about any of this." "Because it wasn't yours to discuss," I said, "and you wouldn't have listened." He looked up sharply. "That's not fair." "No," Patricia said from the window. "What's not fair is spending a year grieving someone and still having to prove you deserve what they left you." Nathan's jaw clenched. Victor raised both hands, measured. "There's no need to get personal." "I'm already there," Patricia replied, eyes still on Nathan. "She didn't make this public. You did, by calling that advisor and starting a chain you couldn't control." Nathan shot her a glare but didn't respond, because she was right. They all knew it. Lauren stood and smoothed her dress. "I think maybe we should go." "For now," I said. Victor stood, collecting his coat. "Eleanor, I'll send the letter template tonight. You sign it, I'll handle the rest." "I appreciate you." He nodded once and gave me that look. The same one Daniel used to give when he knew I was walking into a room full of men who underestimated me. "Go ahead," it said. "Let them find out the hard way." Nathan walked out without saying goodbye. Lauren followed, one step behind him. Only Patricia stayed. She walked slowly to the table, tapped a finger once against the corner of the registration, and said, "Do you want me to delete the recording from earlier?" I took a long sip of tea. "No," I said, setting the cup down. "Keep it. Label it insurance." She smiled. "Thought you might say that." She started toward the door, then paused, hand on the knob. "You do realize," she said, "that he'll come back harder next time?" I nodded. "That's fine," I said quietly. "So will I." I didn't sleep much that night, not out of worry, but clarity. There's a quiet strength that settles in once you stop trying to explain yourself. I brewed my coffee just past 5, still dark outside. The house finally empty except for me. And for once, the silence didn't ache. By 7, I had my laptop open and the file folders laid out again on the dining table. This time, I was reviewing the policy Daniel had switched over a month before his final hospital stay. Updated insurance documents with my name listed as the sole owner, driver, and beneficiary. No shared clause, no estate contingency. It was all there, typed, signed, filed. And Nathan couldn't touch a word of it. The knock came at 7:18. I didn't get up. I just sipped my coffee and let him knock again. Then I heard the door unlock. Lauren's voice, gentle. "Mom, are you up?" Of course. I didn't look up when she stepped in. She crossed slowly, hesitating at the edge of the room, her eyes catching the documents I'd spread out like chess pieces. Nathan followed, less tentative. "You've been busy," he said, his tone clipped. "Just finishing what Daniel started," I replied, clicking through the PDF of the insurance plan. "Everything's up to date, and now double-backed in hard copy." He leaned in, scanning the screen, then the printed page beside it. "You added your own coverage?" I nodded. "Under my name, new policy number. I didn't want any overlap with the estate assets. Too easy for someone to confuse the two." He opened his mouth, probably to challenge me, but I beat him to it. "It's already filed with the DMV," I said calmly. "Victor submitted it yesterday." As if summoned, Victor appeared in the doorway with a folder under his arm, and that same mild expression that somehow made every word feel non-negotiable. "Confirmed," he said. "The updated insurance went through last night. All clean, no questions raised." Lauren stepped closer. "Mom, this is a lot of action for something that could have been handled more gently." "Gently," I repeated, flat. "Like how Nathan gently called an outside advisor without telling me?" Lauren winced. "I just mean, maybe there's room for a conversation." "There was," Patricia said from the hallway. I hadn't heard her come in. "It lasted 5 sections." Lauren sighed. "Patricia." "Let her finish," I said. Patricia leaned casually against the door frame. "You all act like she's making trouble. But what I see is a woman protecting her legal footing from people who clearly thought she wouldn't notice them nudging it out from under her." Victor gave a quiet grunt of agreement. "I'd suggest keeping a print copy of all these forms in your glove box," he said to me. "If this escalates, any roadside claim or challenge could be used as leverage." Nathan scoffed. "No one's escalating anything." "Then you won't mind signing a statement," I said, sliding a pre-filled form across the table. "Confirming that you've seen the updated policy and understand I'm the sole named party." He stared at the page like it had teeth. Lauren reached for it. "Let him," I said, stopping her hand mid-air. "He's the one who started this. He can decide whether to finish it the easy way or the hard way." Nathan didn't speak, but he signed. A heavy, frustrated scribble like the pen had betrayed him. I folded the paper, slipped it into the envelope, and wrote the date in Daniel's handwriting across the top, because it felt right. Then I returned to my coffee. Victor gathered the last of the paperwork and gave me a single look. Not proud, not pitying, just solid, like foundation. "You're covered on all sides now," he said. "I know." Lauren looked between the three of us. "So what happens next?" I glanced out the window where Daniel's car still sat, sunlight glinting off the hood like it was waiting for me to take it somewhere new. "We wait," I said softly. "For what?" Patricia's phone buzzed once. She checked it, then looked up sharply. She met my eyes. "For the fallout." The cul-de-sac was already half full by the time I pulled the car out of the garage. Quiet Saturday mornings had a rhythm here. Dog walkers, newspaper rustling, couples nodding politely from opposite ends of driveways. But today, The pace changed. The minute I turned the corner, I felt them noticing. The same neighbors who'd smiled sympathetically at me 6 months ago were now watching from behind rose bushes and porch columns. Not out of pity this time, but curiosity, maybe even discomfort. Eleanor Hampton, in that car, again. As if I was driving something scandalous. I didn't speed. I didn't hesitate. I just drove the route Daniel used to take when he needed to think. Down past the corner store, loop around the park, back up Ridgeview with the sun hitting the windshield just right. The gear shift responded like it knew my hand. The brakes, clean and gentle. I parked once at the library just to prove I could reverse between two tight SUVs without tapping a bumper. Then I came home. The real stage was the driveway. Nathan stood in it, arms folded like a parking attendant at the edge of his patience. Lauren was perched on the porch, sipping tea she clearly wasn't tasting. Patricia leaned against the front post, sunglasses on, as if narrating the moment silently to herself. And Victor, off to the side, phone in hand, was filming. For documentation, he'd said earlier, just in case. I angled in slowly, easing the car between the recycling bin and the mailbox with 2 inches to spare. Shifted into park. Engine off. The silence that followed was loud. I stepped out. No one spoke. Then Patricia, adjusting her glasses, said, "Well, that settles that." Nathan stepped forward. "You were riding the curb. You could have scratched the—" "I didn't," I said. "But if someone had been—" "They weren't," he faltered. "I'm just saying, it's not—" "She parked cleaner than you ever do," Lauren muttered, not meeting his eyes. He looked at her sharply but said nothing. Victor approached, lowering his phone. Perfect entry. No oversteer, no rear drift. All under control. "It's muscle memory," I said simply, dusting off the shoulder of my jacket. "You do it enough. It becomes instinct." Nathan took a long breath, like he was about to mount some final counterpoint. "Before you offer driving tips," Victor said, stepping in, "you should know I filed the footage and documents with the vehicle registry. Her title, insurance, skill, and now, testimonial video, are all in place. This is no longer a matter of opinion, it's record." Lauren exhaled. "So? That's it then?" "Yes," Patricia said. "It's been it for a while. Some of us just needed longer to catch up." Nathan shook his head. He should have told me." "He did," I replied quietly. "Just not the way you expected." Across the street, one of the neighbors, Janine, I think, raised a hand in a cautious wave. I returned it without hesitation. Let them all see. Let them reframe me. Victor tapped the top of the folder tucked under his arm. "She's made her point legally, now she's made it physically. If this were a deposition, I'd rest the case." Patricia turned to me, her voice lower now. "How do you feel?" I looked out at the car, then back at my front door. Open, sun catching the edge of the frame like an invitation. "I feel like I took something back today," I said. "Not just from them, but from myself." She smiled, genuine this time. Lauren lingered near the steps, eyes flicking back and forth. Nathan stared at the car like it had turned into something else entirely. Victor cleared his throat. "That notarized letter's ready, by the way. I'll drop it off inside." As he stepped past me, I noticed Patricia's phone buzz again. She checked the screen, then raised an eyebrow at me. "What?" I asked. She turned the phone so only I could see. A message from an unknown number. "Be careful who else Daniel gave things to." My smile didn't fade, but it did harden. By Monday morning, I was already driving toward the dealership, Daniel's old haunt, the one with the mirrored windows and the smell of fresh wax that never quite left your clothes. The sun was pale and indecisive, stretching light across the hood like a stage spotlight that hadn't yet decided its cue. I didn't tell Nathan or Lauren where I was going. Let them stew in their own assumptions. This visit wasn't about confrontation. It was about closure and proof. The receptionist recognized me instantly. "Mrs. Hampton," she said, smiling in that careful way reserved for widows of good clients. "You haven't been in since—" "I know," I said gently. "I'm here to finalize the transfer paperwork. Daniel's gift car. The one in my name." Her expression softened into something between reverence and curiosity. "Of course. Mr. Ruiz will handle it personally. He's the one who worked with your husband." Mr. Ruiz appeared moments later, holding a leather folder and a faint trace of nostalgia. "Eleanor Hampton, I thought I might see you again." He led me into his office, a glass cube overlooking the showroom. The faint sound of tires squealing from a test drive echoed in the background. He gestured for me to sit. "I was sorry to hear about Daniel," he began. "He was meticulous. You could tell he was planning for everything." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I'm here. I need confirmation, in writing, that the car was purchased and transferred as a personal gift to me, paid in full by him." He opened the folder and began flipping through carbon copies, dated invoices, and financing records. It didn't take long. "Here it is." He turned the document around. "Full payment made by Daniel Hampton, gift notation filed, no secondary signatory." He even wrote a note in the margin. "Surprise for Eleanor. Don't tell her yet." I smiled faintly. He did love a surprise. Mr. Ruiz chuckled, then became professional again. "If you like, I can notarize an affidavit confirming our records. That should close any possible dispute." "Please," I said, "make 2 copies." As he printed the papers, the door opened. Patricia stepped in, her presence so casual it was as if she'd been there the entire time. "Sorry," she said, feigning apology. "I figured you might want a witness." She winked at me. I didn't ask how she knew where to find me. Patricia always knew things before they were said. "Mr. Ruiz stamped and signed both pages, slid them across the desk, and handed me a copy for Victor. "You're protected, Mrs. Hampton," he said. "Every part of this trail leads back to your husband's intent and your rightful ownership." "Thank you," I said. "And please, keep a record on file." He nodded. "Already done." When we stepped back out into the lot, the cold air felt lighter. Patricia adjusted her scarf, eyes on the rows of gleaming sedans. "You realize this means they've got nothing left to argue?" "They'll find something," I said. "They always do." "But not about this." She smirked. "You know, I almost envy how calm you are. Like you've been waiting for this moment." "I have," I said. "Just not for this reason." A silver SUV pulled into the lot, parking 2 rows over. Nathan's car. I didn't need to see his face to know the expression. Tight, restrained, already forming a counterattack. Lauren was in the passenger seat looking down at her phone. Patricia's voice dropped. "You didn't tell them you were coming." "No," I said. "They like to arrive uninvited. I thought I'd return the favor." We stood there as they got out. Nathan looked from me to the building, then to the folder in my hand. "What are you doing here?" "Finishing what your father started," I said. Mr. Ruiz appeared at the door behind me, holding the notarized envelope. "Mrs. Hampton," he called, "you left your original signed copy." The look on Nathan's face froze. Lauren's color drained. Patricia couldn't resist. "You heard the man," she said softly. "Mrs. Hampton." Nathan stepped closer, voice lowering. You think all this paper means anything? You think it changes what he said to me? I met his eyes. It changes everything you thought he said to you. He stared for a moment, then turned on his heel and walked back to the car. Lauren stayed behind, eyes wet but conflicted. Mom, he's just hurt. So am I said. But I'm not confused. Patricia slipped her arm through mine as we headed toward the exit. Well, she whispered, if this were poker, you just play the queen. I smiled, faint but real. No, I said, just the truth. Behind us, I heard Mr. Ruiz lock the file cabinet. The metallic click echoed like a seal being closed, and for the first time I felt something settle. Not peace, exactly. Power. The next morning smelled like paper and ink. Fresh documents, freshly printed, freshly permanent. Victor sat at the end of my dining table again, his briefcase open, laptop angled toward the window light. He looked steady, deliberate, the way people look when they know the ground is about to shift. Nathan and Lauren stood near the staircase, whispering. They weren't even subtle about it anymore. Patricia sat off to the side, quiet but attentive, her phone recording audio under the table. She didn't announce it. She didn't have to. This is the final packet, Victor said, tapping the stack of papers. Ownership, registration, and insurance filings are complete. Copies distributed to the DMV, insurer, and state clerk. All digital, all time-stamped. It's done. Nathan's voice cracked a little when he said, There's still the matter of family holdings. Dad's other accounts. Not relevant to this asset, Victor interrupted. This vehicle and its associated policies fall outside probate. It's protected by Daniel's pre-death transfer clause. I've confirmed that with the estate attorney directly. Nathan bristled. You had no right to contact. I had every right, Victor said evenly. As Eleanor's counsel. Lauren's eyes darted between them. Maybe we should just step back, let things calm down. Patricia exhaled through her nose. You've been stepping back since the funeral, Lauren. Look where that's gotten her. Lauren flushed. I'm not trying to start anything. No, I said softly. You're trying not to be blamed for anything. That's different. Silence settled again. Victor began sliding the final pages across to me one by one, each signature line marked in red. The sound of pen on paper was steady, measured. Each stroke felt like a door locking behind me and another opening ahead. When the last document was signed, Victor placed it neatly in the envelope and sealed it with one decisive press. All filings will post by noon, he said. And Eleanor. He paused. Yes? There's something else you should know. Nathan straightened. What now? Victor ignored him. When Daniel structured this transfer, he didn't just give you the car. He granted you durable authority over any financial instruments tied to its insurance, maintenance, or resale value. Meaning, he turned toward Nathan and Lauren, his tone neutral but unyielding. Meaning, Eleanor's signature supersedes any executor dispute related to this specific asset and its auxiliary funds. Nathan blinked. That's not possible? Victor smiled faintly. It's possible when you know how to file it. Your father did. Lauren's hand covered her mouth. He gave her financial authority? He trusted her judgment, Victor replied. And now the law does too. Nathan took a step forward, the first one I'd seen him take toward me in days. He must have thought this was temporary. He was sick. He didn't know what he was. He knew exactly what he was doing, I said quietly. Patricia tilted her head. Seems like the only one who didn't know was you. Nathan's glare shot toward her, but she didn't flinch. She never did. Victor closed his briefcase. Everything's filed. No amendments, no appeals. Any attempt to contest will trigger a penalty review. Lauren's voice trembled. Penalty? For frivolous challenge, Victor said. The court assumes malicious intent if a valid notarized pre-transfer is questioned without cause. Nathan's face drained of color. He set me up, he whispered. No, I said, folding the last page into my folder. He prepared me. Patricia reached over, poured herself another cup of tea, and said, I'd frame that line if I were you. Victor stood, extending a final folder toward me. Keep this somewhere private. Safe deposit box, preferably. You're the only one who can access it now. I will, I said. Nathan paced once, then stopped near the window. You're enjoying this? I looked at him, steady. No, Nathan, I'm remembering it. Outside, the car sat in the driveway, sunlight slipping down its polished curve. Lauren followed my gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. So that's it? It's really over? I smiled faintly. Not quite. Patricia glanced up, sensing the shift. What is it? I turned the final page Victor had handed me, the one he hadn't read aloud. At the bottom, in Daniel's handwriting, a note. In the event of my death, any associated trust or residual payment tied to this purchase will transfer to Eleanor's discretion. Below that, a bank account number neither of my children had ever seen. My hand stilled. Victor, I said quietly, this wasn't part of the previous filings. He leaned over, read it, and froze. No, he said. It wasn't. Patricia's voice sharpened. So what's in that account? Victor looked up at me, eyes narrowing slightly. Whatever Daniel didn't want them to find, he said. We weren't supposed to be gathering again so soon, but Lauren suggested it. She claimed it would reset the tone, like we were a team stuck in a bad quarter. She sent out the group text, family only this time, along with a menu she clearly hadn't cooked. Nathan showed up late and brought nothing. I arrived on time, with my folder. Patricia was already seated when I walked in, her phone flipped face down on the table, a slight smirk under her tea mug. Victor followed closely behind me, carrying a slim leather briefcase. He looked like he always does in tense rooms, comfortable, because he knew the weight of documentation always outlasted emotion. Nathan stayed in the kitchen longer than necessary, pouring water like it was a strategy. Lauren hovered at the threshold of the living room. Smile thin, eyes worried. I appreciate you all coming, I said, settling into the armchair that Daniel used to claim before anyone else could. I know tensions have been high. That's one word, Patricia murmured. Victor remained standing, his briefcase untouched for now. Lauren cleared her throat as if trying to break a spell. I think what Mom means is, maybe we've all misunderstood things. We didn't know about the paperwork, the transfer, the trust. None of which were secrets, I said. They were simply private, until they had to be made public. Nathan from the kitchen finally turned. So what's this meeting? A victory lap? No, I said, opening the folder in my lap. It's clarity. For you, for the family, and for anyone who still thinks I'm asking for permission. I passed Victor a single page. He took it, read it aloud with his courtroom cadence. The vehicle, insurance assets, and residual trust funds tied to VIN IHGNH 56738 are hereby and irrevocably assigned to Eleanor Hampton, sole beneficiary and authorized executor over related disbursements and liabilities. He looked up, voice still calm. Filed, stamped, and recognized by state law. As of yesterday. Lauren pressed her lips together. Nathan crossed his arms. I set the folder down on the coffee table. There's a residual trust, I said. A bank account tied to the purchase Daniel made. None of it went through probate. It's mine to manage. And it's not small. Nathan's jaw tightened. You're telling us this now because you've mistaken my silence for indecision, I said. And that ends today. There was a long beat of stillness, not awkward, heavy. Lauren looked around the room like she might find the old version of me hiding in a corner somewhere, waiting to jump back in. But I didn't. Patricia leaned forward, arms folded on the table. How long did Daniel plan this? Victor glanced at me. I gave him the nod. According to the dealership's time-stamped records, he said, a year and 8 months before his passing, quietly, carefully, he liquidated some holdings to fund the trust. Nathan blinked. Holdings? Victor opened his briefcase. From a consulting project he never declared in the family portfolio, a one-time private client. He handed me the file, which I kept closed for now. Dad was hiding money? Lauren asked, stunned. No, I said. He was protecting it. From this exact reaction. A few quiet gasps echoed from the far side of the room. I hadn't noticed until then that Mira and George were present again, invited as neutral family friends, no doubt. Now they were suddenly alert, as if realizing they'd wandered into a private deposition. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I continued, but I am here to establish once and for all that the choices Daniel made were intentional, and they were made with me, not around me. Patricia glanced toward Lauren, whose cheeks had gone pale. Nathan sat finely, but didn't speak. Victor returned to his briefcase, organizing papers. Unless contested through criminal claim or verified fraud, and I assure you, neither exist, this documentation is permanent. Mira whispered something to George. Lauren leaned forward, voice cracking. Mom, I didn't know. I really didn't. I met her eyes. I believe you. But now you do. Nathan exhaled sharply. What are you going to do with the money? I smiled gently. That's not your concern. He stood. So that's it? You walk in here and tell us our father was hiding wealth? I told you, I interrupted. He was protecting me. Because he knew you'd try to control what wasn't yours. Silence again. Patricia tapped her tea mug. I think we're done here. Victor closed his folder and stood. Lauren stayed seated, stunned. Nathan paced once and stormed out without his coat. I didn't move. I waited. Because I knew the third twist was coming. It always does. I always thought silence was the space between arguments, but it turns out, the silence after truth settles in. That's the one no one knows how to fill. Victor packed his folders quietly while Lauren lingered near the window, eyes glossy and unfocused. Nathan had left without a word, but the residue of him, his resistance, his indignation still hung in the air like a coat no one wanted to claim. I stayed seated, calm, still. I wasn't gloating, just grounded. Like someone who'd come through a storm and realized the roof hadn't just held, it had never even cracked. Just to be clear, Lauren finally said, breaking the quiet, this doesn't change everything else, right? I mean, this is about the car and the trust, not the rest. Victor didn't look up from his briefcase. It changes anything tied to that vehicle and its residual value, which includes that trust account, the insurance rollover, and anything Daniel earmarked in those associated filings. Legally, it's not part of the estate. It's private property. Eleanor's, Lauren glanced at me. But you'll still keep us in the loop? I met her gaze, level. Were you ever really in it? She looked away. Patricia chuckled softly. You had the loop. You just never looked at it closely. Lauren didn't respond. Just then, Nathan's voice echoed from the hall. He had returned without knocking, as usual. I spoke to Colin, he said, stepping into the living room like a man trying to reclaim lost ground. My contact at the bank. He said the trust might still be subject to audit if there's unreported disbursement activity in the past 12 months. Victor didn't flinch. It won't be. Nathan narrowed his eyes. How can you be sure? Victor unzipped his case again, produced a sealed envelope, and handed it to him. Because I filed a declaration of inactivity 6 months ago, Eleanor hasn't touched the account. Which means there's nothing to audit. Nathan stood, jaw clenched around a response he couldn't quite shape. And if you call the bank again under false pretense, Victor added, you'll trigger a privacy violation alert, which would make you subject to investigation. The room tightened. Lauren cleared her throat. Nathan, maybe this isn't the way. Don't, he snapped, but not at her. At the situation, at the unraveling. Patricia sipped her tea. You had your chance to handle this cleanly. He turned to her. You think this is about money? No, she said, unblinking. I think this is about control. And you just lost it. Nathan stepped back, breathing hard, as if looking for the exit in a room with only mirrors. Lauren turned to me again. I didn't know it would get this far. It didn't get this far, I said. It was always here. You just didn't see it. Victor shut his case with a soft click. We're finished, unless there's a legitimate legal claim to file. Nathan said nothing. Patricia stood slowly, gathering her things, her movements graceful in the way only complete certainty allows. Well, Eleanor, she said, it's official. They didn't expect you to walk in with facts. They thought you'd come crawling with feelings. They've never seen me angry, I said. Only polite. Behind us, Mira and George exchanged glances from the doorway. George gave a small, respectful nod. Mira looked almost impressed. Nathan lingered near the stairs, chewing his cheek like he still had a card to play. Lauren put a hand on his arm. Don't, she said softly. You'll just make it worse. I already did, he muttered. As they moved toward the door, Lauren turned back one last time. If you ever want to talk, just us, without legal folders or signatures, I'll think about it, I said, which was both true and not. They left, quietly this time. The house felt lighter, but not empty. Victor stepped beside me, voice low. There's still the matter of the trust's contents, when you're ready. I nodded. Not yet. Patricia raised her brow. You're not curious? I'm certain, I said, rising. Curiosity is when you don't trust what's waiting. Victor smiled. Well said. I walked toward the kitchen, the hum of the fridge louder now, the absence of conflict like a held breath finally released. But just as I reached for the teapot, my phone buzzed. A blocked number. No message. Then another buzz, this time from Patricia's phone. She looked down. Her face changed. She turned the screen toward me. A photo of me. Standing at the dealership. Captioned, not everything Daniel gave her is hers. My fingers closed around the mug handle. So it begins. I used to think family conflict came from misunderstanding. Like if we just talked more, things would untangle. But now I know it's the opposite. We talked plenty. They just never listened. The photo Patricia showed me still sat in my inbox the next morning. A grainy shot of me at the dealership. Sunlight cutting across the hood like proof. Caption still attached. Not everything Daniel gave her is hers. It was meant to rattle me. It didn't. If anything, it clarified something I hadn't admitted aloud. Control isn't taken. It's handed over. One small concession at a time. And I was done handing anything over. By the time Victor arrived, I'd already printed the photo and slipped it into the file. "We trace this," I said simply. He adjusted his glasses. "Anonymous number?" "Yes, but not anonymous intent." Patricia joined us, carrying 2 coffees and an energy that could have powered a small city. "Someone's getting desperate," she said, setting the cups down. "Anonymous shade is the last step before total surrender." I smiled faintly. "You sound optimistic." "I sound accurate," she replied. "You're winning. They just haven't accepted it yet." Nathan and Lauren showed up an hour later. Not together. Lauren came first, her face soft with exhaustion and something almost like humility. Nathan followed 20 minutes later, taut, composed, pretending not to notice Patricia filming for safety. "I saw the photo," Lauren said quietly. "Someone's trying to stir things up." "Yes," I said. "And they're running out of other options." Nathan's tone was clipped. "You're implying one of us sent it." "I'm implying whoever sent it is afraid of documentation," I said. "And that's not me." Victor spread out the new forms across the table. Amendments, protections, statements of fact so dense with legality they might as well have been written in steel. "I've extended your privacy protections," he said, "filed under federal confidentiality guidelines. From this point on, no third party can request records tied to your assets without your written consent." Lauren's eyes widened. "Even family?" "Especially family," Victor said. Nathan scoffed. "That's excessive." Victor didn't blink. "No, Mr. Hampton, it's airtight." I didn't look at him when I said, "Thank you." Patricia clapped once, softly. "Well, if that's not poetry in motion, I don't know what is." Lauren's voice trembled. "Mom, we just don't want to lose you. It feels like you're leaving?" I finished. "No, I'm just choosing not to be owned." Nathan looked down. "We never tried to—" "You tried to manage me?" I said evenly. "That's different. You assumed I'd stay grateful and quiet. I'm not ungrateful, Nathan. I'm just awake." For once, he didn't argue. Patricia leaned forward. "You know, I used to think Daniel spoiled you," she said. "Turns out he was training you." That earned the smallest, proudest smile from Victor. "He was meticulous," he said. "He left nothing to chance." Lauren's phone buzzed, but she didn't check it. Her shoulders sagged, a mix of relief and regret. "So it's really over then," she said softly. "It's never over," I said, "but it's finally fair." She nodded, eyes wet. "I hope you're right." I looked at her carefully. "I usually am." Patricia chuckled under her breath. "Now that's the Eleanor I remember." Victor packed the last of the files into his case. "You're protected, Eleanor. Financially, legally, publicly. The narrative's yours now." "Good," I said. "Let's keep it that way." Nathan rose from his chair, suddenly older somehow. "What are you going to do next?" I met his eyes. "I'm going to drive." Lauren frowned. "Drive where?" "Anywhere I want." Patricia laughed. "Now that's the line we frame." Nathan hesitated in the doorway. "If Dad were here, he'd be proud," I said before he could finish. He didn't argue that either. When they were gone, Victor lingered. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "there's something I didn't mention. That account Daniel created, it's earning interest. Substantial. You'll want to decide how to use it." I looked toward the window where Daniel's car sat in the driveway, gleaming like it had been waiting all along. "Oh," I said. "I already have a plan." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Do tell." But I didn't. Not yet. I just smiled, small and sure, because they'd learned nothing, and I'd learned everything. By Thursday, the whispers had changed tone. Not vanished. No, not yet, but softened. Tilted toward curiosity, maybe even respect. At the grocery store, I passed Mrs. Lennox from the neighborhood association. She gave me a long, surprised look, then nodded, slowly, like she just realized I wasn't a story someone told her, but the author. Outside, Daniel's car waited in its usual spot, no longer a symbol of dispute, just mine. A few blocks away, I saw Nathan and Lauren. They weren't together. Not anymore. Not even walking with the same rhythm. Lauren held a reusable bag tucked against her chest like a shield. Nathan's hands were in his pockets, head down, jaw set. People saw them differently now. They'd overplayed their hand and lost the room. Back at home, Patricia stood by the window, coffee in one hand, binoculars in the other. "Your social stock is up," she said, adjusting the lens. "George waved at your driveway. Twice." "Did he?" I said, smiling. "And Mira was overheard at Bridge Club saying you handled that whole situation with restraint." Patricia paused. She meant it as a compliment, which is a miracle. I sat down with a fresh stack of envelopes. Most of them were thank you notes, quiet ones. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in months now sending folded cards with vague words like grace and fortitude. One even left flowers on the porch, lavender and eucalyptus, the kind of peace offering you send to someone who survived the fire and rebuilt the house. Victor arrived just before lunch. He never rang the doorbell anymore. He simply knocked once and entered, like a man who knew his place in a story. "All protections are finalized," he said, setting a new folder on the kitchen table. "Filed, encrypted, verified. Anyone who tries to challenge your rights now will need a court order and a prayer." "Good," I said, not looking up. "I'm not religious." Patricia chuckled from across the room. "So what do we call this chapter? Victory lap? Restoration?" "No," I said. "Recognition." Victor sat, folding his hands. "There's something Daniel wrote in the margin of one of the filings. I didn't show you before because it wasn't legally relevant. But maybe now it is." He handed me a copy of the dealership transfer, yellowed slightly from storage. At the bottom, in Daniel's handwriting, "For Eleanor, because they will doubt you, and I never did." I traced the ink with my finger. "You think they'll read this one day?" I asked. Victor raised an eyebrow. "You think they haven't already?" Across the street, Mira's curtain shifted. Patricia lifted her cup. "To never asking for permission again." I clinked mine against hers. That afternoon, I took the car out. Not for errands. Just a drive. Windows down. Radio low. I passed the elementary school where Lauren used to wave to me from the fence. I passed the little bookstore where Daniel bought me my first copy of Persuasion. I drove past Nathan's office too, slowed slightly, then kept going. A few people waved. Some stared. One woman near the bank entrance gave a thumbs up and mouthed, "Good for you." It wasn't about the car. It was about visibility and control, and how many women get both after the funeral. When I returned home, there were 2 more envelopes in the mailbox. One from Victor, confirming the interest had been rolled into a high-yield trust under my sole direction. The second had no return address. Inside, a typed note. "Not everything Daniel gave you was yours to keep." Beneath it, a single sentence. "Ask about the other key." My fingers didn't tremble, but my breath caught, just once. In the driveway, the car gleamed in the sun. And for the first time since this all began, I remembered the small second key Daniel kept hidden, the one he never explained. Not to Nathan, not to Lauren, not even to me. Patricia stepped out, catching the expression on my face. "What is it?" she asked. I looked down at the letter again. "Not a threat," I said quietly. "Then what?" I looked at the car. A breadcrumb. There's a kind of peace that comes after war. Not the parade kind, not the speeches or confetti, but the kind where silence feels like safety, where you hear your own breath again and realize you don't owe anyone your explanation. That's how the morning felt. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even bring my phone. Just Daniel's key, the key, and a thermos of hot tea. The car opened like it had been waiting for me. I sat down, adjusted the mirrors, slid on my gloves. The engine started with a low hum, steady, patient. Like it, too, had outlasted something. I drove without a destination, just curves and hills and long, straight stretches of two-lane roads that ran out toward nowhere. The kind Daniel used to call thought roads. Roads meant for settling something that had stirred too long. Each mile peeled a layer off my chest. Grief, fury, expectation, all falling behind me like leaves in the wind. I didn't miss them. Not today. At a red light near the overlook, I slowed to a stop. The town was small from here. Smaller than I remembered. As if all the weight it once carried, family, opinion, approval, had shrunk into something manageable, maybe even forgettable. From the glove compartment, I pulled out the second key. It was identical to mine, but heavier. Or maybe that was just memory playing tricks. Daniel had slipped it into a velvet box once, tucked inside the back of his sock drawer. I'd found it months before his death and asked. "Just in case," he said. "Not everything needs explaining." At the time, I thought he meant emergencies. Now I wasn't so sure. When I returned home, Victor was already at the table. He'd let himself in, like usual. "I filed the last set," he said, without looking up. "Including the quiet claim from the dealership. Your name is the only one on title, in every digital system." "Thank you." He looked at me then, studied me like I was part of some precedent he might cite in a future case. "You've won, Eleanor." "I know." Across the room, Patricia sat in my armchair, legs crossed, notebook open in her lap, not writing anything, just keeping it there, like a placeholder for observation. "Peace looks good on you," she said. "It feels strange," I admitted. "Because you've never had it without conditions," she replied. "This time it's clean." I walked to the window. Outside, the car gleamed again, catching the light like a lens. Lauren had driven past earlier but didn't stop. Nathan hadn't been seen all day. "They're quiet," I said. "They're irrelevant," Victor corrected. Patricia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Until they're not." I nodded. "That's why we stay ready." Victor handed me a new folder, thinner than the others. Inside, a proposed next step. A transfer of the residual trust into a private foundation under my sole oversight. "For long-term protection," he said. "Nobody can touch it once it's named, not the kids, not their advisors, not even the IRS without a court order." "And the beneficiary list?" "Entirely yours to write." Patricia leaned forward. "Let me guess. No blood ties." "Not anymore," I said. I signed the draft without hesitation. The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was earned. Victor closed his case and stood. Patricia lingered. I heard Mira's organizing a luncheon, she said. Wants to honor you. For what? For surviving with grace, apparently. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't survive with grace. I survived with records. Patricia laughed. That's the same thing in the zip code. We both knew she was right. That evening, I sat alone in the garage with the second key in my hand. The light overhead flickered once, then held steady. I opened the center console. The hidden compartment Daniel had custom fitted was still there. Flat, seamless, barely a breath of space. The second key didn't unlock the ignition. It clicked open the compartment. Inside, one envelope. No name, no stamp, just a seal and Daniel's handwriting on the back. If they ever come for more, I stared at it. Didn't open it. Not yet. From the living room, I heard Patricia's voice floating back from her call with Mira. No, she's not coming to the luncheon, she said. She doesn't need to be honored by people who doubted her. She already got what they never did. Clarity. I closed the compartment. Locked it again. Peace isn't given. It's protected. And I would. Whatever came next. The morning began with fog, low, silver and soft, like the sky itself was undecided. I let it linger, watching it from the kitchen window as the car slowly took shape in the mist. First the grill, then the headlights. Then the sharp angle of Daniel's gift cutting through the haze like a promise made and kept. I took my time. Patricia sat at the counter, flipping through a local newsletter that still hadn't printed a word about the hearing, the trust, or the fallout. But the absence of gossip in this town was its own kind of headline. You're driving today, she said without looking up. Yes. Where to? I smiled faintly. Somewhere they can see me. She didn't ask who they were. She already knew. Victor arrived as I was finishing my tea. His briefcase was smaller now. No folders, no affidavits, just a slim envelope, and his usual air of quiet finality. All systems are locked, he said. There's nothing more they can touch. Good, I replied. They've touched enough. He nodded, glancing toward the garage. She's ready. She always was. Patricia stood, pulling her coat around her shoulders like a cape. Want an audience? No, I said. Just truth. I drove out slow at first, letting the neighborhood take note. Windows shifted. Curtains twitched. Mira's husband gave me a two-fingered wave from his porch, like he wasn't sure which side of the story he'd finally landed on. Didn't matter. I wasn't writing for them anymore. Nathan and Lauren stood beside her driveway, separately, again. Nathan looked away the moment he saw me. Lauren didn't. She held my gaze, just long enough to know that I wasn't coming over. I was driving through. When I reached the turn onto Main Street, the fog had cleared. Sunlight cut clean across the hood, glinting off the chrome like punctuation. Daniel always said this car wasn't about speed, it was about presence. And now, it had one. Victor met me again at the Overlook. It was our place now, neutral ground with no past attached. He parked, exited, and stood beside me at the guardrail. You've changed the weather, he said, not joking. I just refused to drive through their storm. He handed me the envelope. Inside, confirmation that the residual trust had been fully transferred into the Eleanor Hampton Foundation. Private, protected, perpetual. They'll find out, I said. They already know, he replied. And they know they lost. Behind us, a few onlookers paused to admire the car, just close enough to be seen, just far enough to pretend they weren't watching me. One man nodded. That's Daniel's, right? It was, I said gently. Now it's mine. Victor smiled. You've handled this exactly the way Daniel hoped you would. I looked out over the horizon. I waited long enough to know when the moment had arrived. He knew I wouldn't rush. Strategic patience, Victor said. Rare. Necessary. He handed me a second envelope. No stamp. No label. The contents from the hidden compartment I'd finally unlocked. I read it, he said, but it's better coming from you. Inside was a single sheet. Daniel's handwriting again. Sharper this time. Urgent. If they challenge you beyond the car, use the key. It gives you access to the travel account. Use it to disappear, or to remind them you don't have to. I exhaled. Not surprise, just certainty. Confirmed. Victor placed a hand briefly on my shoulder, then returned to his car. No ceremony, just completion. Back home, Patricia had assembled a few guests for what she called a non-luncheon luncheon. George, Mira, one or two others I didn't trust, but no longer feared. They asked polite questions. I answered none, just smiled, offered tea, and let the silence fill with their interpretations. Where are you headed next? Mira asked, trying to sound casual. I glanced toward the garage. Anywhere that takes a key. They laughed, nervously. Even admiration, it turns out, can be fragile. Patricia refilled my cup. You've outlasted them, she whispered. No, I said. I simply waited for them to exhaust themselves. That evening, after the guests had gone and the sun had begun to slip beneath the rooftops, I walked out to the driveway one last time. The car was warm under my palm. The paint held light like memory. I opened the door, slid behind the wheel, and looked at myself in the mirror. Calm, whole, unapologetic. I didn't drive far, just enough. As I pulled onto the road, I heard my own voice say it. Not out loud, not for anyone else, but for the record. He said I shouldn't drive. He didn't know it was his father's gift to me.